In this lecture, let's try to insert a record from our Java application into the table that we created. That's the products table. But before going into writing a program, let's write a util class to accept the details from the user. So I'm going to right click on my package here and create a new class called keyboard util. Click finish. And this is going to be also a final class because it's a utility class. Let's also make a private constructor only to ensure that you cannot instantiate this class in any way possible. And then we're going to write a public static function. So the intention of this particular function is to accept a value from the user, probably by displaying a message. I'm going to start by using a string function. So I'm going to say here public static string get string, and then I'll say here string message. I want to show that message to the user, so I'm going to type here system.out.print and then pass that message. It's just going to tell the user like enter a name for the product or enter the ID, etc. And then I want to accept the data from the user. For this, I'm going to use scanner. SC equals to new scanner, but my scanner object would now represent system.in. So basically I want to accept from the keyboard, and scanner is supposed to be imported from util. You can press Command Shift O or Control Shift O on Windows to automatically import or delete the imports that are not used. Now that I have the scanner, I can simply say sc.nextLine. And this is the function that reads the entire line from the keyboard and then returns the same thing. And notice we have one warning message over here that says that there is a possible resource leak because behind the scene, scanner might have used some native code which might have used some memory area. So obviously, if you're not closing the scanner, there is a possibility of the memory leak from C++ code. So we know that we don't want to close the scanner because the closing of scanner will also close the input stream from the keyboard. We don't want to do that because then onwards you won't be able to accept anything. So what I can do to avoid that is to add a suppress warning to this particular function. And because I'm going to write one more function or two more functions, they also may have to write this. I can cut this from here and then paste it at the class level, saying that inside the class, ignore about the resource leak. Anyway, we now have one function. Let's write a similar function. I'm going to write public static int. Let's call it as getInt. I think from here till here, it's the same thing. So there's no change. So I'm going to write the same. And then I'll say here return sc.nextInt and close the bracket. So one last function that we want to write here at this time is public static double. Let's call it as getDouble. Once again, this up to here remains the same thing. In fact, up to here remains the same thing. I'm going to copy and paste that. But then, of course, it's the next double. So I'm going to call the next double function and my util class is ready. So let's quickly move away from here and write a program where I can accept the values from the user and then add that as a record to the database table. Right click on my package and say new class. Let's call it as insert new record. Add a public static void main. First, let's accept all the values that we want to pass it on to the database table as record values. So I'll type here int id equals to keyboard util dot getInt, and then I type here enter id, and whatever the user enters will be converted into int and will be assigned over here if it is successful. Otherwise, you get an error like type mismatch and so on. So the second one would be string name of the product. So I'll type here keyboard util dot getString enter name. And the next two of them are also string. And the second one is going to be description. Let's call it as desk. So let's type here as description. And this one is going to be category. Let's give here enter category. And one last is the double price equals to keyboard util dot get double enter price. Now that I have this, we have to create an SQL command such that the entire SQL command is ready for execution. So this is the main drawback as well as a very, very big security issue. We will discuss about this in the next lecture. However, let's try to say here string SQL equals to, I can probably say here string.format and then use a formatted string and followed by ID, name, description, category, and then price. And the formatted string here can be something like this. Let me full screen this. Insert into products and then say here values. The first one is simply a integer, so I can say %d, comma, second one is a string, I'll have to say %s. Notice the use of single quotes there, and then again a %s and then another %s and then %f for the double. So we have here a formatted string. So if I just go and print this SQL, you will actually see the SQL command that would be passed on to the DB. Now this is actually vulnerable as far as security is concerned, because I might want to do something called SQL injection. While I don't want to go too detailed into what is SQL injection all about, it actually allows the end user to hack into your database and insert record, not only inserting, but also allows hackers to log in without having the proper credentials. I would like you to explore something on SQL injection. Anyways, now we have our SQL command ready. Let's use the same try catch block using the resources. And here I will say catch any exception we have. This time I'll say ex.print stack trace. So that's another way of printing the stack details of the exception. Let's use this bracket to declare a connection. Con equals to dbutil.getConnection. Let's import the connection. Statement stmt equals to con.create statement. Once again, statement needs to be imported from java.sql package. We got that ready. Now all I have to do is to say stmt.execute update. Now the execute update is the better suited among the other execute variants as far as DML is concerned, because if you are having DML such as update or delete, for example, how many records got affected, you can get that as a return value over here. And that's the reason this is preferred when it comes to DML. However, in our case, we are executing only one insert statement, which is only inserting a single record, although DBs like H2 and MySQL allow you to pass on multiple values in the same insert statement. So we can still get the number of records being inserted. But in most cases, this is going to be one. So I'll use this SQL command right now. If everything is okay, let's print out a message saying that record inserted. So if you run this code with some values, ideally it should be successfully inserted. However, if you pass on, for example, the same ID once again, you may get an error because it's a primary key violation, and then you will get into this section. So let's go and run the same thing and check it out. So I'm going to run this. It says here in the console, enter ID. I'm going to type it as 1. Let's type Lenovo laptop. Description, Lenovo Z560 TravelMate. The category, let's say for example, this comes under, let's call it as electronics. And then the price, let's give around 45,000 rupees. I press enter. It says record inserted. If I go and check out over here, I execute this run once again. You can see now I get the record properly inserted. However, if I go back and run this again, notice that it has been terminated over here. I can click on this drop down and say insert new record. Once again, I'm going to type the same thing. 1, since this is going to fail, I'm going to simply type ASD, ASD, ASD and some number. Since this is going to fail because of the primary key value, the rest of the values didn't matter anyway. So when I press enter, you'll see that it gave me an exception saying unique index or primary key violation, primary key on public.products ID. So we are able to get appropriate error messages. You can also go back and verify once again that there is no duplicate record. So I hope you understood the way I can execute an SQL insert command using the statement interface. Although this has got lots of drawbacks, we don't use this in practice. In the next lecture, let's understand the actual problems involved in the statement and how do we overcome the same thing using something called prepared statement.